Montpellier Forum. As we kick off this meeting, please head to the chat and tell us a little bit about yourself, your name, your organization, and where you're joining from. I am Dr. Layi Butake, Director of Communication and Outreach for Academia 2063, and I am joining you from Kigali, Rwanda. And I'm delighted and honored to be your Master of Ceremony for the occasion. We are here today to officially launch the latest report by the Malabo Montpellier panel of experts in agriculture and food security, themed Value Up Policy Innovations to Advance Africa's Food Processing Sector for Growth, Jobs, and Health. This report focuses on strategies to boost Africa's food processing sector. And I will stop right there. I'm not giving you any more details at this point because we have an exciting lineup of knowledgeable experts who will speak to the issues addressed in this report. And as always, we are looking forward to a highly engaging conversation. You know what to do. You can head to the Q&A section at the bottom of your screen and type any contributions or questions you might have. And we will have a segment during which you will have the opportunity to ask any questions directly to the various speakers. As always, we are providing simultaneous interpretation in English and French. You can click the globe icon at the bottom right of your screen and select the relevant language should you need interpretation. With that, let's kick this off by moving into part one. I'm sorry, we have some feedback. My colleagues in the technical team, please mute anyone who is not speaking right now. Thank you so much. So we are going to head to part one of this session for the welcome remarks. And to lead us through this, I will welcome our first speaker, Executive Chairperson at Academia 2063 and co-chair of the Malabo Montpellier panel. Please welcome Dr. Ousmane Badiane.
Thank you, Layi. Dear guests and participants, it's an honor to welcome you all, starting with our co-chair of the Malabo Forum, Ambassador Asia Ben Salah Alawi from Morocco. Thank you for joining us. It's also my pleasure to welcome those who are invited to join the fire chats and the country representatives who are also in the roundtable session. It's a pleasure to have you with us. We know how tight your schedules are, so making time for us is something we value and we appreciate greatly. Also would like to recognize Ambassador Joseph Asako from the African Union, Commission in charge of agriculture, rural development, and the economy, a strong supporter and a friend of Academia 2063, and of course, welcoming my co-chair, Professor Joachim von Braun. Thank you also everybody from the Malabo Montpellier panel who's here with us. It's great seeing you again, and thank you for your contribution to the panel's work in general, but also to this particular report. Ladies and gentlemen, the meeting today of the Malabo Montpellier Forum is continuing a long tradition we started several years ago. I think this is report number 17 and forum number 17. I will just say a couple of words on the background of the work of the panel and the purpose of the meeting here today to set the context. Looking back over the last 2 decades across Africa and comparing to the 3-4 decades prior, we cannot but notice broad-based progress across the continent. Agreed not at the speed and level and scale that we all would love to see, but something important happened over the last 2 decades. Compared to the stagnation of the 80s and 90s and certainly the 70s, the 2000s have been decades of advancement and progress on so many different fronts. Looking at what we need to achieve even more going forward, there is a case to be made for us learning from the successes over the last 2 decades in order to find ways of scaling them up, expanding, accelerating them. And that is the driver behind what the Malabo Montpellier panel and the forum are trying to achieve. We're trying to find ways of understanding where there has been positive change continentally across the countries, across the different segments and sectors, try and document and understand that positive change, document it, and then try to share those lessons that allow us to be able to imitate them where we need to accelerate them where we need to scale them up where we need to. So the work of the panel takes a specific sectoral issue, policy or strategy issue. Like this time, we're talking about agri-industrialization, in particular around our staples food sectors. So when we take a sector like that, we want to understand which countries are making the most progress on the continent. Then we go in there to try and see what they do. And what they do in this case is in terms of government actions. We do know that progress happening on the ground, driven by the private sector and other stakeholders. But government action is central to it because it is contributing positively or negatively. And where there's progress, we assume that there is something that government has done that is right. So what we do in our work, we try to look at institutional innovations, policy reforms, programmatic interventions in those countries that we find to be making the most progress across the continent. And we document this. Why do we focus on government actions? Because that's what another government can copy. Interventions, institutional innovations can be designed, it can be copied, of course, adapted and aligned with the needs of the ground, but a ministry, an agency can look at an innovation from a country and be able to look at it, adapt it for their needs. Same with policy reforms. Those are things decided by ministries, agencies, directorates, people who, again, can learn from successful stories from their peers and do that. And same with designing programs. And the reason why we're doing this is to share and circulate around that feeling of possibility, that my peers are succeeding in these areas and here's what they're doing. Me as a prime minister, as a minister, as a permanent secretary, as a director general, as a head of agency, if my peers are doing it, I should be able to do it as well. So it is possible. And more importantly, what we do in our work, we look at several countries because you'll find no two countries do the same thing the same way. So we have a menu of different ways to move the needle and achieve progress. So we are trying to do this as much as we can, just to create that dynamic of understanding where progress is taking place, getting to the bottoms of government actions that has enabled that progress so that other governments can embrace this kind of actions, institutional, policy, or programmatic, to continue to move progress across the continent. So this is the work of the panel, which I have the honor to co-chair with Professor Joachim von Braun, and which is also housed here at Academia 2063. And our reports to every year presented at this forum, co-chaired graciously by Ambassador Assia Ben Saleh Alawi of Morocco and His Excellency Haile Mariam Desalegn from Ethiopia, who is traveling and in a time zone today that won't allow him to join us. So let me stop here and welcome you again all to this 17th edition of the Malabo Forum and call upon my co-chair, Professor Joachim von Braun, to take the floor and make his statements. Joachim, thank you.
Thank you, Usman. Always a pleasure to co-chair this wonderful forum and panel with you. Excellencies, colleagues, investors in the Malabo Montpellier panel, thank you. Thank you for joining us, and I thank all participants. Let me briefly take a global perspective on food processing industry. The top 20 food processing companies sold about 300 billion US dollars of food last year, of processed foods. Their sales of processed foods are expected to grow at 12% per annum in the next 10 years. 12%, such growth rates you typically see only in the digital economy, but the food processing industry has these growth rates as well. We will learn more about the causes of this growth in the context of our meeting. This is a growth market in which Africa's own food processing industry can and will participate. The lessons from the studies in Ghana, Kenya, Senegal, and elsewhere point at the strategic opportunities. Reliable raw material supply chains, number one. Strong links to the science, technology, and innovation landscape in the country, in Africa, and internationally are key forces. The African entrepreneurs are there. The finance must be facilitated. Africa can leapfrog over the health and obesity problems of the food processing industries of the rich West and the rich East by combining convenience with healthy nutrition and diversity. Such African foods will also find a global markets. I now want to call on Her Excellency Dr. Asia Ben Salah Alawi. Excellency, please take the floor. Please unmute.
Yes.
Wonderful.
Okay.
We hear you. Thank you.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, Professor Van Braun, Dr. Badian, members of the Malabo Montpellier Forum, Excellency Co-Chair Haile Mariam Desalegn, Excellency Josepha Soko, African Union Commissioner, Excellencies Minister and Senior Representatives of African countries, and honorable representatives of development partner organization, ladies and gentlemen, all protocols observed. As the co-chair of the Malabo Montpellier Forum, I'm delighted that you all have joined us today to dialogue on this critical topic, food processing in Africa. We all know how important this sector is for African countries' development for obvious reasons, but unfortunately often overlooked. Is it necessary to underline the good nutrition is at the core of achieving the fundamental right to food we are all yearning for, and for human resources development, as human capital is still the main engine of the development of nations. So, a well-nourished and healthy population contributes to improved well-being and livelihoods for all, poverty reduction, and economic growth. Food processing is one of the most important pathways for improving the nutrition status of many population groups across Africa and boosting the agri-food systems and beyond the economic development at large, assuming, of course, that food safety requirements are rigorously respected and controlled by the relevant authorities across the value chain. Large-scale food fortification and other food processing mechanisms do enhance the nutritional value of foods, as detailed in the report that will be launched today by the Malabo Montpellier panel. The continent has been engaged in the traditional processing of foods since the past decades. However, the rising demands of processed foods call for increased adoption of advanced technologies to enhance the production of these products. These could contribute to reducing the dependency on imports to the continent, which can be challenging, as we have seen during the COVID-19 pandemic and the Russia-Ukraine war, where we have seen crises leading to hikes in prices and not only important foods, including processed foods, but also the other materials for processing. As for the larger picture, the food processing industry sector, which accounts already for nearly 1/3 of total manufacturing employment in sub-Saharan Africa, is expected to grow substantially. As for my own country, it is the second employment provider in the manufacturing sector. African governments have indeed implemented strategies that have led to significant increases in agriculture production for improved food security. However, many challenges are still to be addressed, as for instance, the post-harvest losses related to storage and transportation. More policies and interventions beyond raising agricultural productivity and output levels are required. Opportunities need to be generated in all segments of the value chain, starting at production levels and crucially in the processing sector, adding value to agricultural products and strengthening local and regional markets. For example, in Morocco, His Majesty's vision for FTA's hub and exceptional openness to African countries have secured good access to regional markets. This trend has enhanced the growth of Morocco's food processing industry, which represents today the second largest processing industry in Morocco. This growth has contributed to good nutrition and job creation. There will be further progress through as well the new step in the global strategy towards moving from low-cost model to a strategy achieving products including higher added value components through innovation. Allow me to stress that my country's performance in this domain is far from being limited to these aspects, as Iman Ibn Rabi'a, who represents today the Ministry of Commerce and Industry of the Kingdom of Morocco, will certainly show. I would like to also talk briefly about women engagement in the sector. According to the African Development Bank, women dominate across Africa as primary food processors with increasing frequency as manufacturers of packages ready-to-eat food products. Despite the recognition of women's positive impact on food processing activities, more interventions are needed to address their gender-specific challenges. Starting, of course, is it necessary to say it, that in the rural areas in particular, young girls need to go to school and should not be subject to exploitation as free labor force by their own families and elder peasants. And of course, enhancing the scale-up of women's processing enterprises and boost their participation is a real must. The Malabo Montpellier panel took significant steps towards this goal through its previous publications on policy innovations that put women in the center of food system transformation in June 23, and about youth in the agri-food systems in February 2024. Today, the panel's new report further explores how food processing can drive food systems transformation and economic development. The strides made in the food processing sector by the three main case studies, Ghana, Kenya, and Senegal, but as well by Morocco and South Africa, very briefly mentioned, are quite inspiring and pave the way for forward progress for the continent as a whole. Indeed, key factors for success, such as finance, investment, equipment, and many, many more, have been duly identified, as have been as well the many challenges which must be overcome to fully take advantage of the great potential African countries offer in that field. All these objectives are critical for the development of this sector, which contributes actively to Africa's global welfare. I encourage you to engage actively in this discussion, and I extend my congratulations to the panel and its research team on this important policy report and look forward to our discussions today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency Ambassador Alawi, for those powerful opening remarks. And we're always delighted to have you here with us as we unveil latest research from the Malabo Montpellier panel. It is now my honor to invite our next speaker for welcome remarks. Her Excellency Commissioner Josepha Sako, Commissioner at the African Union Commission for Agriculture, Rural Development, and the Sustainable Environment. Madam Commissioner, over to you for your remarks.
Thank you very much, Dr. Lai, for giving me the floor. Good afternoon, every one of you. Good morning, depending on your geographical location. Let me acknowledge the presence of His Excellency Ale Mariam Desalegn, former Prime Minister of Ethiopia, and Malabo Montpellier, a forum co-chair. I would also like to acknowledge the presence of Her Excellency Assia Ben Salah Alawi, Ambassador at Large of His Majesty Mohammed VI of the Kingdom of Morocco, and also Malabo Montpellier Forum co-chair. I will also, I can see, I don't know if my colleague, sister, Excellency Rhoda Peace is present, the former Commissioner for Agriculture and Rural Economy, my brother, Dr. Usman Badian, Executive Chairperson of Academia 2023, Professor Joaquin Vondrom, co-chair of Malabo Montpellier panel, excellencies present, esteemed panelists, ladies and gentlemen, and all protocol duly observed. It gives me great pleasure to give the opening address at this 14th Malabo Montpellier Forum convened to share and exchange on the findings of the last report on of the panel on a very topical issue, policy innovation to advance Africa's agri-food processing sector for growth, job, and health on the continent. The recognition of the critical role that agriculture plays in the transformation of the African economies led African Union, head of states and government in July 2003 to ratify the Comprehensive Africa Agricultural Development Program known as CAADP as an African policy framework for agricultural transformation, wealth creation, food and nutrition security, economic growth, and prosperity for all the African citizens. The Maputo Declaration was renewed in 2014 as the Malabo Declaration. After 10 years of implementing the CAADP, the Maputo Declaration, we came out for the second decade, which is the Maputo Declaration. And it came out with 7 commitments that we are still implementing and is going to expire by next year, 2025. So the department has already engaged on the process of shaping the new post-Malabo CAADP strategy and action plan. 20 years of implementation of CAADP has seen an increase in Africa's gross domestic product, our GDP, although we could have done more, but at least this instrument is really helping us to shape the way of the transformation of agriculture on the continent. So it is good that we are working with a plan, framework program, a continental plan framework program, the only common policy for agricultural transformation on our continent. Then it also came out with an average income, increase the income, our incomes, agricultural output and productivity was also improved, agricultural trade and agricultural investment, as well as significantly reduction in hunger and poverty. Not surprisingly, since 2000, Sub-Saharan Africa has also achieved the highest rate of agricultural growth of any region throughout the world. Approximately 4.3% of agricultural growth has been registered in this part of in this region of Africa. The progress has, however, been slower than anticipated due to, we all know what is happening, due to the immense challenges and shocks such as the climate change. The previous speaker have already alluded it, the climate change, pandemic, and global economic disruption. I am committed to working to sustain and deepen the progress made through CADEP by various activities of the Commission, such as the recent fertilizer and the soil health summit held in Nairobi this year in May in Nairobi, and the ongoing post-Malabo agenda, which presents a pivotal moment for reshaping Africa's priority. And I think what our conversation today, the team here processing, it's really one of the core if we want to reach our food sovereignty, if we want to reduce unemployment, and if we want to reduce hunger and poverty on the continent. So this is a very pivotal topic that we are going to discuss this afternoon during this meeting. So while building upon CADEP's existing strength, it will strategically adapt to tackle emerging challenges and align with global trends. So we want to really align with the global trend, mostly the Agenda 2030, our SDG, because SDG number 2, this is really a priority for Africa as well, as part of a member of United Nations. As part of the post-Malabo agenda development, several critical steps are underway. Let me share it with you. We have already built the drafting of the 10-year strategy and the action plan aim to create a forward-looking document that outlines the vision, goals, and actionable steps for the next decade. The drafting of the Kampala Declaration is on. We are working on the Kampala Declaration because we just validated the 10-year strategy and action plan last week in Kampala. Now we are going to work on the drafting of the Kampala Declaration, which aim to encapsulate the collective commitment and aspiration of African nation towards agricultural transformation. Then, upon finalization, these documents will seek endorsement from the political leaders, reinforcing their commitment to advancing sustainable agri-food system and addressing pressing challenges. Together, these efforts will pave the way for a more resilient and prosperous agriculture future in Africa as part of the research and analytic work. 13 technical working groups met in Lusaka from July 25 to 30th this year to finalize and validate their group's reports. This Montpellier report will not have come at a more opportune time as efforts are going to define the CADEP agenda for the next 10 years. As the concept note for these events rightly amplify the upward trend in growth of population, income, and urbanization, and the takeoff of the African Continental Free Trade Agreement present ample opportunity to develop Africa's agri-food processing sector. The demand for food that are ready to cook and ready to eat and are nutritious and safe is rising, and in fact, dominate African food imports. Efforts to curb the growth of the emerging agri-food processing sector in Africa is a win-win situation, as it will tackle the perennial food waste and loss, and create opportunity for job creation and income generation for various actors across value chain, including youth and women still resisting the agricultural sector. However, the realization of this opportunity will require effective strategy to tackle challenges related to access to capital, improved processing technology, adequate knowledge and skill, and conducive policy and investment environment, including digital capacity. I am glad that the last Malabo report has taken up this challenge to support government's effort with evidence-based and practical recommendations on successful and effective approaches to enhance the contribution of Africa agri-food processing sector to food system transformation. I am particularly impressed with the part that discuss the opportunity for replication and scaling up successful intervention and possible avenues for structural transformation through a sustainable agri-food processing sector, as well as the 3 countries case study, which is Ghana, Kenya, and Senegal, which has shown success and progress in the growth of their agri-food processing sector, and can be replicated or mainstream to all other African countries. Let me conclude by commending the Montpellier Forum for the painstaking report, which I recommend highly to all our countries' agriculture and trade ministers and other policymakers. I thank you very much for your kind attention. I submit.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, Commissioner Sako, African Union Commissioner for Agriculture, Rural Development, Blue Economy, and Sustainable Environment. Thank you so much for those opening remarks. And with that, we have now concluded the first part of today's session, and we are moving on to part 2 to delve into the findings of this report, to delve into the research and the action agenda from the Malabo Montpellier panel. To kick off the presentation, I will now invite the Director of the Natural Resources Institute at the University of Greenwich and Malabo Montpellier panel member, Professor Cheryl Hendricks. Over to you, Prof.
Sorry, just checking that Aisha is not presenting. Hello?
Thank you, Prof.
Yes, that's Aisha presenting.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Aisha, Dr. Aisha Musazi Nakito, Program Lead for the Malabo Montpellier panel and Senior Scientist at Academia 2063, will take us through the first part of the report. Over to you, Dr. Nakito.
Okay, Laila, are you going to share the slides or I can present from here?
Yes, we're projecting the slides.
I can share from this side. Sorry?
We are already projecting the slides. Can you see on your screen?
Oh, yes. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, Professor Van Braun and Dr. Usman, members of the Malabo Montpellier panel, honorable ministers and senior country representatives of African countries present here today, the representatives of the African Union, and as well as representatives for development partners, ladies and gentlemen, all protocols observed. I greet you all, and it's a great honor for me to present part of the Malabo Montpellier report findings for the report titled Policy Innovations to Advance Africa's Food Processing Sector for Growth, Jobs and Health. Next slide, please. So this is the report outline for the presentation today. We shall have the first part, which will be sharing the main report findings. And then part 2, we will have lessons from country case studies. And then part 3, we shall have a presentation on the action agenda and recommendations. Next slide, please. So one may ask, why are we presenting, or why is there a report about food processing? What is the interest of the Malabo Montpellier panel in food processing? As we have seen in the introductory speeches, the opening remarks, there are rising demands of processed foods in Africa, and this is due to a combination of the increased population growth, urbanization, as well as levels of income. And of course, we have also seen a rise in the share of processed foods in Africa's imports, as seen in 2003, for example. In 2000, the share was 28%. And as of 2020, this had risen to 33%. So with this rise in the share of imports of processed foods, it shows that in the African market, there is high interest or demand for consumption of processed foods, and therefore there is an untapped potential for the food processing sector to get more from the African market. And there is also a high level and rising share of processed foods in intra-Africa trade. So given these demand dynamics, that's why there is a high interest or a call to invest more in the food processing sector to have this expand in Africa. Next slide, please. And in addition to the demand dynamics, there are also potential benefits to gain from the food processing sector. We have seen that the foundation of the food processing sector relies mostly on smallholder farmers. So the growth of the food processing sector benefits many actors across the value chain. So if there is any stagnation in the food processing sector, it means that many players, right from the smallholder farmers, get impacted as they have less opportunities to generate more income. So that means that we need to ensure that more efforts are put into the food processing sector to tap into that demand, to increase revenue for all actors in the agri-food value chain. And we have also seen that Africa has a net import of foods, and yet most of the foods that we export are raw and unprocessed. However, when you look at the income that can be generated from the processed foods, the income is much more that we can get. So that means that many food processors in Africa, if that can increase, if the number of food processors can increase, it means that many people can benefit in terms of employment opportunities, entrepreneurship opportunities, and also, as mentioned in the first point, it means that also smallholder farmers will be able to generate more income. And of course, as we're talking about food, we stand a high chance of improving the food security and nutrition of Africa's populations. So we see here that given the food loss in Africa, if more foods are preserved, that means that we are improving on the food security. And of course, we also can improve the nutrition of the Africa's population, because when you process food, depending if you use a good processing technique, that means you're improving the nutritional qualities of the food. And that way you can improve the nutrition status of Africa's population. Next slide, please. Now, aside from the benefits, Africa, we have some challenges that still need to be addressed. And starting from the technical challenges, there has been a rise of many small enterprises in food processing. However, we find that most of them are producing the same product, because when one sees a colleague or a peer producing a certain product, they want to imitate with the hope that they'll also be able to gain income from it. But at the end of the day, you find that this imitation leads to low returns, and that keeps most of the food processing SMEs at a low profit margin. There is also a challenge in skills development. So that means that in the ability to innovate products which are of high quality, which are nutritious, is also slowed down due to the lack of skills amongst many of our people in Africa. But these skills can be in terms of operating machineries, or it could be in terms of business skills, which are needed if you need to be able to grow a business. The access to machinery that which I've already talked about, it means that even when we import, let's say, a very good technology from outside of Africa, it needs to be adapted to the local context to make it more accessible and affordable to the people here in Africa. Looking at the market access, we know that the competitiveness of food processors and their access to markets within Africa is affected by both domestic and global tariffs and non-tariff barriers. So these need to be addressed as they hinder the trade, the regional trade, and it limits access to production inputs to markets for processed food products. The business environment, infrastructure is very important. This infrastructure includes, yes, the processing machineries, but also other issues like electricity, good roads, because all this can slow down the growth of the sector. Unreliable supply of raw materials, it goes back to the smallholder farmers mostly who are impacted by this, by the lack of infrastructure to be able to preserve their foods well. Access to warehouses also can lead to unreliable supply of raw materials to the processors. The issue related to finance, this one affects many dimensions, right from infrastructure, still also the raw materials, machinery, but also other inputs that may be needed to make a food processing SME grow. Then when we look at consumer preferences, you find that this is a challenge because sometimes when a product is developed, I'll give an example of, let's say, banana flour. You're reducing the preparation time, but then you may find that some consumers prefer the original taste of the banana. So that means that food processors have to align their production, their product development with the interests of the consumers. And this also relates to the quality of the quality standards, where many some consumers may be biased, where they think that the locally produced products are not of quality, and maybe the foreign ones are the ones which are of quality. So that means that food processors have to make sure that they earn the trust of consumers in order to increase their markets locally, but also regionally. Next slide, please. I would also like to talk about the opportunities and solutions to some of the challenges. I've highlighted some of them. But looking at the first one, where we need to integrate smallholders into rapidly expanding food processing sector. This can be done through innovations like digital or web platforms, where smallholder farmers are linked to different markets, including the processors, so that way processors benefit in getting reliable supply of raw materials, but also the smallholder farmers benefit as they can generate more income. Indeed, for any food processing sector to thrive, it means they must have domestic supply of raw materials that is reliable instead of incurring more costs importing these raw materials. So we need to support the smallholder farmers and also other actors along the value chain. Now, enhancing the competitive performance of food processing enterprises. So this calls for addressing all challenges like infrastructure, skilling, development of locally adapted technologies. It requires all players, that is the government, private partners, development partners, private sector, to all come together to prioritize investments into, say, infrastructure. Because if we can increase the capacity for technological innovation, it means that we can develop better advanced, for example, machineries, which are locally adapted to the context. Skills and upgrading, that also leads to increased innovation, access to infrastructure and services, as well as devising innovative strategies to increase financing of food processing SMEs. Next slide, please. Now, we've talked about the other opportunities, but also we need to address and discuss a little bit more on the nutrition benefits from processed foods. Just a little background here, I would like to share that processing could help overcome the rising prevalences of micronutrient deficiencies in Africa. Here, there is an example where we're seeing that amongst Africa's preschool children, at least 62% are deficient in one of these micronutrients. So this is a call for optimizing some of the benefits of processing. There is also a rise in diet-related NCDs like obesity, where amongst adults, we have a rise from 7.9% in 2000 up to 12.8% in 2016. And the children in Africa, the rate is really alarming, because if you look at the global rates, 24% of children who are obese are coming from Africa, and they are under the age of 5 years. So that means that in as much as we have processed foods that can lead to these unhealthy outcomes in relation to obesity and type 2 diabetes, for example, still processing can be used to channel and gain benefits from these processed foods. And if you look at, for example, food fortification, it's a very good way through which we can tackle the micronutrient deficiencies. And in this way, we also want to say that it doesn't only look at industrial food fortification. We need to also find ways through which the small-scale food processors can access affordable inputs that can add value to the foods that they process. Fermentation, pasteurization, canning are all examples through which we can either preserve food or enhance nutritional quality while also ensuring food safety. So we need to develop and ensure that we enforce effectively the implementation of food safety policies, as well as facilitating compliance with national, regional, and international standards and regulations. Some countries may not have these national regulations yet, but it's important that we benchmark on countries that have already developed them so that we ensure that we have quality, nutritious processed foods in the African continent. Next slide, please. Yes, I hand over to you, Lai.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Dr. Aisha. I will now invite the next speaker from the Malabo Montpellier panel, visiting researcher at Imperial College London and member of the Malabo Montpellier panel, Dr. Debisi Araba.
Thank you very much, Dr. Butake. Good afternoon, everyone. To follow on from the first part of this presentation, we will now do a deep dive into the case studies that we derived and the lessons we've learned from them. If we can have the next slide, please. So the aim, the objective of this is to identify the countries that have made the most progress in advancing their food processing capabilities, or the sectors. We deployed a four-step approach using three indicators: agriculture production index per capita, the value of imported food processing machinery, and also the share of exports of processed foods that were exported to other countries in Africa. These processing, as our rationale was that such development not only generates more jobs, but also increases the household incomes of employees, contributing to overall economic development. Next slide, please. Now, if you take a look at these two figures, there's supposed to be a quadrant here. We have the rankings high and low on the x-axis, and of course that's the horizontal, and then the y-axis, the vertical. We have the production index per capita, and also the import of food processing equipment. So agriculture production index per capita, and import of food processing equipment. The countries that I want you to pay more attention to are the countries to the right, extreme right on this slide. The countries highlighted in red were the top countries that ranked highest. So Ghana, Kenya, Libya, Madagascar, Morocco, etc. Can you go to the next slide, please? Then we took a look at African countries against the two axes again. The first axis, agriculture production index per capita, but now looking at the share of processed agriculture exports to other African countries. Here we see the countries again that rank highest on both indices in the extreme right. If you move to the next slide. Now, so those were the first two steps. Now, in the first two steps, we had Ghana, Kenya, Morocco, Senegal, South Africa, and Zimbabwe highlighted in red, ranking highest for the two steps. For the third step, we then looked at the countries that scored the highest consistently along all three indicators. And these were Ghana, Kenya, and Senegal. For the other countries that scored higher, they weren't highlighted as case studies, but we did a deep or a light touch analysis of them in the main report. And we welcome our participants to go into the website and interact with the data sets and also the narrative around these case studies. So let's begin with Ghana. Next slide, please. Now, although Ghana for now has no explicit policy or strategy on food processing, a lot of the government policies and programs, particularly in the agriculture, energy, trade, and industry sectors, contain components that promote food processing industry development. They also provide a solid foundation upon which to build a coherent food processing development strategy. We have the research and development and dissemination of context-specific techniques and equipment through the Cocoa Board, the Cocoa Research Institute, Food Research Institute, and of course, Ghana's industrial policy. We have the sustainable supply of raw materials, the one district, one warehouse program of the government where warehouses were set up in each of the districts across the country to reduce post-harvest losses, but also to create jobs for youth. In addition, we have the Planting for Jobs program that has touched the lives of over 3 million Ghanaians, and in fact has been renewed for a phase 2 targeted at producing close to 500,000 jobs across the agriculture and food sectors. We also have under safety and quality, the National Food Safety Policy and the National Quality Policy for Ghana. Next slide, please. Now for Kenya, the summary is, Kenya does a lot more promoting investment, quality products, and the building of skills. Through the Kenya Investment Authority and the Export Processing and Special Economic Zones, these support value addition through the establishment of food processing facilities and the provision of technical assistance to organizations in the sector. The Export Processing Zone program promotes export-oriented industrial investment by offering investors new fiscal, procedural benefits and incentives. For example, the 10-year corporate tax holiday, 10-year withholding tax holiday, and perpetual exemptions from value-added tax and custom duties on industrial inputs. Also, Kenya has the National Food and Nutrition Safety Policy that have included efforts to build the technical and institutional capacity required to meet food quality and safety standards, providing incentives to increase food processing industries in rural and urban areas alike, empowering youth and women to take up opportunities in food processing. The standards and levy by the Kenya Bureau of Standards is also one of the incentives there to support compliance with national safety standards. We also found within the Kenya Industrial Research Development Institute, as well as the Kenya Institute of Business Training, the support for entrepreneurship and management training programs on various aspects of management for micro, small, and medium scale enterprises, the collaboration with technical vocation, education, technology centers, and other local international training institutions in providing MSMEs with training on entrepreneurship and product standard certification. We also have the Micro and Small Medium Enterprises Authority that empowers the youth by training them on necessary business and management skills, in addition, of course, to access to finance, but more importantly, the know-how of making businesses succeed and thrive. Next slide, please. Now in Senegal, they have the sovereign funds of strategic investments, which focuses on promoting direct investments in Senegal's economy for the creation of jobs, of course, to accelerate national economic and social development. The fund finances projects, small, medium scale enterprises, and also invests directly in food processing companies across the agriculture and food value chains. We also have the Guarantee Fund for Priority Investment, which allows small, micro, and medium-sized enterprises to access credit, affordable credit, by providing the guarantee mechanisms to the financial services sector. We have the National Agency for the Promotion of Investments and Major that provides Senegalese with incentives and the encouragement for the processing sector, such as tax exemptions, customs duty exemptions, free export enterprise status. It enhances access to financing, and of course, supports innovation. The Senegalese investment, which provides, sorry, I'm hoping I can still be heard.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. I couldn't hear you. The Senegalese Investment Code provides incentives for new investments in key sectors, like the agriculture sector, fisheries, and manufacturing. The Institut de Technologie Alimentaire, ITA, supports national, industrial, and small-scale food fortification, conducts training programs in food processing, product development, and provides technical assistance to food processing SMEs in the design, for example, of semi-industrial production units. The General Delegation for Rapid Entrepreneurship of Women and Youth provides financial support for entrepreneurial ventures, including SMEs, and has an annual budget of approximately $50 million. It offers, in addition to financing, training programs, technical assistance to help entrepreneurs develop the skills they require to improve their operations and businesses. So these, from these three countries, what we see is that the countries have various approaches and various areas of where policies have been fine-tuned, or the directions that policies place emphasis on. In Ghana, it's more on the food processing, research and development, supply of raw materials, and the product quality. In Kenya, it's the promotion of investment, quality products, and building skills. In Senegal, you have more emphasis on financing, investing, promoting, processing SMEs, and of course, investing in the skills and capabilities of entrepreneurs. And we believe that from these and the other countries highlighted in the report, other countries across the continent will be able to appreciate where the policy incentives are to transform the agri-food processing sectors in their respective countries, and learn the lessons that these other countries being spotlighted have learned along the way, and hopefully can innovate, and we create this collaborative race to the top. With that, I think I come to the end of my section, and I thank you very much, Dr. Pataki.
Thank you very much, Dr. Araba. I will now invite Engineer Dr. Dorothy Okello, Dean of the School of Engineering at Makerere University and member of the Malabo Montpellier panel, to present the action agenda and recommendations from the report.
Hey, thank you very much, Dr. Pataki, and good day, good afternoon, everyone, and all protocol observes. Thank you all for joining us on this interaction. So I will come to the conclusion of our report by highlighting the action agenda and recommendations that emerge from this work. And we have 5 key areas that I will be sharing upon. The first of these is the need to incentivize the establishment and growth of food processing enterprises. Boosting the production of processed foods necessitates greater investment in improved processing equipment as well as infrastructure to assure raw material supplies and low-cost delivery in both urban and rural areas. For example, cold chains and transport infrastructure being a part of this. This should also be combined with measures to enhance the competitiveness of existing enterprises and the capacity to innovate and grow into larger, more competitive entities that attract both local and international investors to establish food processing industries. Strategies here may include tax exemptions on advanced processing equipment, local raw materials and construction supplies for these industries, and reduced electricity tariffs, among others. So fostering an enabling environment also necessitates policy coherence across the various sectors to promote food processing. The second area that we highlight is the need for increased investment in technical and business skills training relevant to food processing so as to foster innovation. Competitiveness in terms of cost, quality, and enterprise management requires developing and upgrading skills which can be gained through, for example, tertiary and vocational education and training institutions and other tertiary institutions, developing and using advanced and automated machinery in food processing requires specialized skills in fields such as engineering, artificial intelligence, and information technology. Furthermore, manufacturing innovative, safe, and nutritious products requires expertise in food processing, safety, food safety, and product development, as well as nutrition, among others. There is therefore the urgent need for a more skilled workforce, and hence supporting youth to pursue relevant training programs will improve their employability and entrepreneurship opportunities in the sector, leading to a more skilled workforce capable of developing innovative products that can appeal to the taste preferences of future generations. The third area, the third area that we highlight in terms of the action agenda and recommendations forward is around strengthening of linkages between smallholder farmers and food processing industries. To ensure a reliable supply of raw materials for food processors is a key factor in the sector's success. To achieve this, governments and the private sector need to increase efforts to promote the integration of smallholder farmers, including through, for example, contract farmers, producer organizations, and as well as using modern technologies such as digital platforms to facilitate connections across the value chains. These efforts are crucial in aggregating agricultural products and enhancing access to food processing SMEs markets. So this also necessitates investments in modern agricultural machinery and technologies to increase farm productivity and yield. Additionally, policy and regulatory interventions to improve storage equipment, as well as marketing, distribution, and packaging activities along the value chain are all most crucial. The fourth area that we highlight is around the need to enhance export prospects for processed food products. Strong integrated regional markets and strong performance in these markets are critical components of strategies to promote the food processing sector across Africa. However, to increase the export of processed products, it's crucial to tackle cross-border trade barriers. Governments can achieve this by lowering export costs, leveraging regional trade agreements for improved market access, ensuring compliance with international standards and certifications. For example, by offering training on global trade practices and building a strong brand identity for African products. There's also a growing opportunity for SMEs in the food system to enter the broader markets with specialty products that are based on locally produced staple foods, as well as vegetables, fruits, and animal-based foods, facilitating value addition in Africa. The fifth area that we highlight is on optimizing the benefits arising from food processing. Food processing tackles various challenges, including, as we've seen, malnutrition through large-scale food fortification, product reformulation, enhancing micronutrient bioavailability, and developing therapeutic foods. It also plays a pivotal role in food preservation, waste reduction, as I have seen posted in the chat as well, food safety, taste enhancement, and lowering cooking fuel and refrigeration needs. Ready to eat and easy to prepare processed foods offer convenience for busy urban and rural residents, and also reduce the time women spend on meal preparation, time that can be directed to other activities, including income-generating activities. To ensure the nutritional value of food is preserved throughout the value chain, we also need an increase in efforts to enhance or maintain nutrient content right from the pre-production stages, such as developing improved varieties, through production, processing, packaging, and up to the consumer level. So these are the 5 areas in terms of the action agenda and recommendations that emerged as part of this study. I thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Dr. Okello. Thank you, Dr. Aisha and Dr. Araba. Thank you all for your presentations. There are a lot of requests from the chat about the presentation. We will get them to you in due time. So thank you again for your contributions. And I guess that the presentations from Dr. Aisha and the 2 members of the Malabo Montpellier panel have provided insight into the findings of this report on how Africa can leverage its food processing sector. We have a couple of minutes. We are on time, actually. We have about 2 minutes for quick questions from the audience before we move on to the next part of this event. So I have 2 questions in the Q&A chat. In the meantime, if you have something burning you want to contribute, please raise your hand and you'll be given the floor. I see from Cecilia D'Alessandro, how do you see the role of development partners, particularly the EU, in supporting Africa's goals on food processing? and which policy processes at the continental level are relevant to support beyond the post-Malabo agenda? That's a question that can be addressed by any of the panel members. Dr. Bajan, Professor Von Braun, Dr. Araba, Dr. Okello, would you like to weigh in on that?
I can make a quick comment from a European perspective or international perspective. The food processing industry is an industry, and you cannot expect much developmental perspective from them. They are interested in capturing market share in Africa in the future. We later have development partners on the agenda who may add their perspective from, for instance, the German government and African Development Bank and so on. I think the development partners have a strong interest in a health-oriented, sustainable food processing sector development and can do good by providing skills, finance, and advice on appropriate regulatory frameworks, for instance, to facilitate that food waste and losses, as Dr. Asya Ben Salah has mentioned, are reduced in the growth process of the sector in Africa. Back to you, Chair.
Thank you, Professor Von Braun, for those remarks. We have another one from Paul Gwinnett. Can't food processing better build on fresh exports? Can't food processing better build on fresh exports? Dr. Bajan?
Okay, let me take on that one. Thank you, Paul. Good having you here. It's been a very, very, very long time. And I guess when you say fresh exports, you mean both global as well as cross-border regional exports. And indeed, not only can we, I think we must. If you look at cross-border trade, regional trade flows of traditional foods, staples across Africa, 70% are semi-processed or processed. So the demand, 70% of that is in the process segment. So the fresh is good, but it has a ceiling. So the bigger market is in the process for greater conservation, longevity, market reach, quality preservation, and so on and so forth. So we must actually, not just can, build on the fresh produce and expand their value and the quality through processing, but also the ease of preparation and access through processing. So that is the extension of the chain and the next frontier, I would say. So thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Bajan. We are going to move on to the next part of our session. There will be plenty of time for questions. Please keep dropping your questions in the Q&A chat and we will bring them to the floor progressively. But before we move to the fireside chat, I would like to invite all the speakers who are on the call right now to please turn on your cameras so that we can get a great photo up for our records just for a couple of seconds. Please remove the spotlight from my video so we can see everyone. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. So we are going to move to the next part of our session, the thematic fireside chats. And to moderate this session, let me invite back to the floor Academia 2063's Executive Chairperson and Co-Chair of the Malabo Montpellier panel, Dr. Ousmane Badiane.
Thank you, Lai. We have so far heard quite a lot from the main reports, the presentations by Dr. Aisha, and, Dr. Devisi, and Professor Dorothy. There's a lot that they've covered. We want to go a little bit in depth with a few practitioners on the ground or researchers that look in depth into a few items here. I'll be discussing with them the issues of research and development of technologies to enable innovation. You saw that it came out of one of the challenge areas. And so was also the issue of skills development and upgrading. I'll be talking about that with my guests on the fire chats. Paul just asked the opportunities for value addition on fresh produce and others. So that is going to be also covered. And finally, we'll be talking about the very important enabling environment. To discuss those 4 items, I'm joined by Ms. Patricia Ejalo, Deputy Executive Director of Standards at the Uganda National Bureau of Statistics. I'm also joined by Honorable Prof. Ruth Onyango, Editor-in-Chief, African Journal of Food, Agriculture, Nutrition and Development. We are joined as well by Professor Charles Kwezika, Executive Director, Uganda Industrial Research Institute. And finally, we are joined by Professor Charles Torto, Chief Research Scientist, CSIR Food Research Institute, and I assume this is in Ghana. So thank you to all of you. I'll start with Professor Torto. Prof, the rise of urban population, the demand for processed food, convenience foods has led to the mushrooming of a food processing sector. But we often see that these are small and micro enterprises with very low barriers of entry, a lot of imitations going on, producing the same type of often low quality products sold to the same customers, trying to eke out a profit, which becomes very, very difficult. So unless we can boost the innovation capacity, both in terms of products and processes, it's going to be very difficult for some of these small and micro enterprises to grow and continue to capture a larger share of the market. So my first question to you, Prof, is what specific R&D policies should or could governments pursue and implement in order to accelerate innovation in the agri-food processing sector, technical innovations, and how can these policies be effectively enforced and monitored? So in your area, what can we do to boost the innovation capacity through research and development and to access more processing technology? Thank you. The floor is yours, Prof. Could it be that you're muted?
Are you asking me? when you say Prof, but
no, this is for Professor Charles Torto,
yeah,
Chief Research Scientist, CSIR. Prof. Charles is on the panel.
Professor Charles, he's there. Online, he's here, but he's muted.
He's muted. Okay, then let me move then to Honorable Professor Ruth Onyango and talk about the opportunities.
Prof. Charles Torto here. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Please go ahead.
Thank you. Good. Thank you very much. And I'm grateful for the opportunity to be with you. And based on the morning protocol established, permit me to also join that same protocol and say thank you for the opportunity to be here. First of all, I CSI Food Research Institute, where I am employed, over the to SMEs, small medium skills enterprises, to start to commercialize these technologies for food processing within the country. And it may interest you to know that way back in 2020, I want to take it from that far, we started on a low profile of about 6 technologies. And by 2021, we had 11. By 2022, we were having 42 of these technologies. In 2023, we had 35. As of June this year, we have developed 12 of these technologies. And the interesting part is that these technologies mainly are coming from our indigenous crops, like our cassava, our yams, cocoa yams, plantains, and our sweet potatoes. We also have our cereals and legumes, like millet, sorghum, maize, cowpea,
Prof, the line is not very good. Can
I
we
think
give you
progress.
we lost him.
Hello,
Can you hear me?
Yeah, Prof, can
Okay.
Prof, can I give you time to fix your line before I come to the second question and then go to someone else?
Oh, can I continue?
Can I? Can everybody mute their mics, please? Prof, I will give you time to fix your line, and I'll go to the next speaker, and I'll come back to you in a second, if that's okay. Thank you. So let me go to, I was just starting with Professor Onyango. From what we heard today, Prof, the aspiration for the transformation of food systems for increased food security and improved wealth creation cannot be realistically pursued without the development of a vibrant food processing sector. So from your experience and what you've seen on the ground and your work, what do you see as opportunities and needed measures to boost the emerging processing industry to add value to the abundant agricultural materials around us? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Badian, and let me thank you all for this opportunity and for what I've already listened to. Great work and very timely. Yeah, actually overdue, long overdue. As we have always known, and from the time I've been working in this sector for a long time, we know that unless you secure your food and nutrition security, you cannot develop, and so we've been emphasizing increased production, increased yields, but as you do so, you end up with an abundance and you don't know what to do with it. And if we don't have these systems in place, even for smallholder farmers, the food will go to waste. And then in the urban centers, food will also be lost. And we cannot move forward without it. So really, it requires a wholesome strategy, an integrated process, and many partners involved. And when you look at food processing, especially, many times for it to be successful, it has to be private sector driven. So in this sector, really, government just needs to facilitate. Government needs to be intentional in educating, capacity building, making sure that we have the right expertise. And ideally, you know, we all want to eat fresh food. Fresh food is the best. It gives us the best nutrients. But it too has to be handled properly. And so when we now venture into processing, we have to partner. We have countries which have expertise. Our countries don't work in isolation. So that's where we can actually easily partner and get expertise. We need to get our universities to partner with each other. We need the right equipment. We need to maintain that equipment. And also we need to look at how Africa itself has been processing food. So just copying what the West has done for me is not the answer. You know, I looked through some of those reports and I looked even at the Kenyan report, and what I saw was just what we have done since Malabo 2014. The institutions were put in place, but I didn't see anything about monitoring and evaluation, how many people are impacted, if we are going to address food and nutrition and address malnutrition and hunger, how many people really eat those foods which are processed? Because the processed foods actually, serve a different target group. But it's absolutely important since we have a growing population, but also want to create jobs. So we need expertise in this sector. You know, fresh foods, you can quickly have your workforce trained how to handle, and so that if you are getting into a market, the market receives it when it's okay. It's a lot easier. The minute you start to process, so many things can go wrong. So many toxic items can get into this. Contamination can get in. The kind of water that is used, the people handling, you know, are they tested? And then we have a growing population. And in my country, Kenya, we just have so much corruption, you know, people doing so many bad things. So you cannot be sure of the quality and the safety of the food that is processed that you are actually eating. So when you have regulatory departments, they have to do the right thing. But I can tell you this, Dr. Badian and everyone listening, that it is a great opportunity along the food value chain. Great opportunity to create jobs for young people. But we have to be intentional. Government has to actually be intentional about this. And any government needs to prioritize food, and it needs to add value to the jobs within the food sector. And I remember some time back, Dr. Badian, way back when I was starting, I visited Malaysia, and Malaysia used the palm oil. They used the palm oil, they had the farmers producing it, they had chemists, biochemists, they had food scientists, they had engineers, they had electrical engineers, they had technicians, and all these people went and trained in other countries, especially the USA. And that's what is really keeping that country going. So it's very important that any country that wants to do this becomes intentional. And since we may not have the right market to eat, to really absorb all this food, I look at it regionally. You know, whenever I go to Tanzania, Uganda, which is in my own area of Kenya, I find unique things on the market. I find unique foods in the gardens, or in the forested. It is just growing wild, but it is either medicine or it is food or it is both. These are the kinds of things we Africans need to make sure we secure, we rescue, we add value, and we share. But you have to do it properly. Otherwise, processing can also just get rid of everything that you want. So it's an area that requires very close monitoring. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Prof. This is great. One of your key issues is around the capabilities, the skills, and so on. That's a good way of transitioning to the next questions and fireside panel member, Professor Charles Kwesiga, Executive Director, Uganda Industrial Research Institute. Prof, you just heard it, skill shortages or training gaps can hinder, of course, growth and development in the processing sector. So limited technical skills in processing, product development, packaging, machinery, operations of machine, you mentioned, you name it, they're all areas where more skills need to be upgraded, to be developed, and so on. And from where you sit and your role, very important role in Uganda. So what do you see the contribution education and training centers can play in bridging the skill gap that we need for enhanced performance and competitiveness in the food industry? Thank you for your time, sir.
Thank you very much, Dr. Badian. Thank you for such beautiful presentations I've heard from all and sundry. I thank Dr. Kello, Dorothy, Dr. Araba, and Dr. Aisha. Listening to them talk, I was tempted to think that maybe I had read the report, but I didn't remember that I had. We have a lot of commonality of understanding of what is at stake. To put skilling in context, the ultimate goal, everything we are talking about, is creating viable food processing enterprises. And to create food processing enterprises, like any other enterprise, we must engage appropriate technologies. We must engage the appropriate human capital. We've talked a lot about gaps in skills and so on. Those two have been a major foresight for Uganda Industrial Research Institute. When we started our journey some time back, we were interested in, through vehicles like business incubation, to grow startups and support them, skill them, make them understand how to make marketable products. But the incubation process could never end, because at the end of the day, these guys would never be able to graduate out of it, because they don't have the seed capital to purchase the technologies they need, to train, continue training with the manpower that they must have. And so we took an initiative to build a new facility in Kampala for focusing on the creation of viable, affordable, appropriate technologies for those startups. And I stand here to invite any of you who has the opportunity to be in Kampala to come and see what I'm talking about. And so we are through that new campus, we are engaging in modern technologies, affordable technology. We're driving down the cost of technology, because dependency on foreign technologies is not going to get us anywhere. You can teach somebody how to process milk, but they have to go to France to look for a pasteurizer. And I'm saying, what is in a pasteurizer that the Africans can't make? And so we have directed our efforts to engage in the manufacture and development of indigenous technologies that are of the modern genre, that will process, will use process highly marketable high quality products. On the issue of skills again, we have had a lot of effort made since pre-independence. We've had vocational institutes, we have universities, but the way we deliver skills to these people is a lot more to do with certificates rather than their hands-on skill. my proposition here is to say, let us create platforms where we can complement the theoretical knowledge we impart these students and complement that with hands-on training. And so we have a robust project here that encourages apprenticeship so that the campus I'm talking about has both the training wing and the production wing. At production, you can engage those other qualified students to do apprenticeship, hands-on exposure, and see products being made. And so that is our approach to addressing those two key problems. And of course, the financing part is that's another constituency, but we must propose comprehensive solutions that include the financial aspects of the enterprise development, that include high levels of entrepreneurship, and together those are the elements of the process that we must address and address fully. I cannot emphasize the issue of quality because especially as you try to drive down the cost of imports and you want to export, you must be able to make products that are competitive at an international level. And so our threshold for success must incorporate the ability to match or even beat the quality that we are up against. I thank you very much for listening to me.
Thank you, Prof, for all those key important points. Very much like your emphasis on the difference between training for certificates and training for hands-on. And you often hear people talking about bringing agriculture and food issues into secondary training, talking about university. That is good, right? But it's only one track. There's a more important and more immediate track, and for the entire agri-foods value chain, which is hands-on training and institutional infrastructure for short-term training, for skills upgrading of those who are already in the process, who are active and so on, right? And that's where we are failing. We have a little bit of a training school here or there, a project here or there. It ought to be mainstreamed in the same way than we do elementary, secondary, and tertiary education. We needed something that is for skill upgrading and development that embraces the entire value chain, not just those who have time to go to school, but those who are already productive, so that they can expand their technical horizon from farmers to even input providers all the way to processors. So very, very important point. You touch also on quality and so on. I will have to come back to you, Prof, on the issue of emerging technologies. You're talking about what's in a pasteurized that we cannot make, but also the emerging technologies where you have to be in a position to compete and create those opportunities. So I'll come back to you on that. But before that, let me talk to Ms. Patricia Chalu on the issue of enabling environment. You talked about, Prof, financing comprehensive solutions. The enabling environment plays a huge role in allowing us to do that. So in this instance, Ms. Jalu, what do you see as challenges and opportunities to improve the performance of the agro-processing sector with regard to policy and regulatory framework to improve the quality and food safety to meet consumers' demands? Professor Charles was just talking about that. Where do you see us moving forward in terms of policy and regulatory measures, institutional issues, the entire enabling environment? And thank you for making time for us this afternoon.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon, everybody. Yes, just to quickly go into responding to the question, A lot of us have to put in effort in policies that work, thinking through the value chain and making sure that everybody along the line is doing what is needed. We are focusing very much in Uganda on the issues of export promotion and import substitution. And the idea is that we want to be able to make sure there are products in the country that meet the requirements of the standards, so that majority of the people can have them available domestically and the excess can be available for export promotion. And value addition is where we are pushing towards to reduce our export of raw produce and ensure that there is value addition to anything that we're doing here in Uganda. And so the policy environment has to make sure that players along the value chain are working together. An example for us is, as UNBS, we work very closely with the Ministry of Agriculture and the specific departments and authorities they supervise. When it comes to value addition for milk, we work very closely with DDA, and that's the Dairy Development Authority, and we will not certify products that have not been cleared by the agency that is responsible for milk. For coffee, we do the same thing. The classic example we're going through right now is the grain issue, and we have a grain policy under the Ministry of Trade, Industry and Cooperatives that has brought the players together, all the people concerned, to ensure that value chain is covered properly. And the key issue of regulation is that Ministry of Agriculture and UNBS, with the SPS permit and the Q mark certification, can ensure that whoever is in the sector meets those requirements, so that only the products that meet those requirements are available to the market, whether it is local production or for export. Implementation of standards, we've also gone into in the purchasing by government. We're looking at the big buyers. Government entities are required to buy produce that is covered by the national standards. They have invested in institutions like ours to make sure the standards are available and the conformity assessment is required. So government must procure what is certified. And when the buyer insists on quality, everything follows through. So we've had the Ministry of Finance sending out second budget call circular, instructing all government entities to buy what is certified. The PPDA is doing the same thing. I mean, you've got to fight this from every angle and make sure that people understand there is no room. We cannot have market access to substandard products. So now when the big buyers are buying, the World Food Programme, the Ministry of Education and Sports, all that policy is being they're bringing the issue of food safety into that area, so that in Ministry of Education now, it is in the policy for education. We are training the inspectors of the Ministry of Education. They are inspecting schools based on the food hygiene standard in Uganda. You cannot store food unless you're following those requirements. So in that way, you're influencing policy and making sure that other players are implementing what is known as the Uganda standard. It's not just for one entity, it's for everybody concerned. So by making sure the big buyers are following the standards, the people producing are being forced to meet the requirements of the buyers. And then, of course, we have what we are doing, the collaborative regulatory schemes, like with maize grain, how we are doing the SPS permit and the Q mark must go together for any grain produce, because we are at different points of the value chain. So you want agriculture to make sure that what's coming from the farm is sorted. You want UNBS to make sure that what has been added value to is meeting requirements. Those two requirements will be needed for it to go into the market. And we're looking also at the district bylaws. And we're working together with different partners to look at the districts who produce certain products. How can they control the movement of raw produce, so that you make sure whatever leaves your district is actually meeting requirements? And we actually have a pilot running right now in Mubende, and it's going to work. Based on the news that we are getting, the aggregators, the small aggregators have been trained, they have understood, they have applied for certification. It's quite amazing. And, you know, a lot of these people, it's just about getting the information down to them. Food safety is not rocket science, but everybody has what they can do at their level to improve the safety of the food. So we're looking at making that work for people. And in essence, it has already shown an improvement. We've got the numbers of certified maize flour has grown from 2019, about 14 to over 400 this financial year. I mean, the numbers speak for themselves. The number of products that are available that are meeting the standards have grown. And if we can make sure there's no room for substandard products in the market, once we solve domestic problems, the export market is also covered, because the export market, when you find problems there, it's because of what went wrong at home. So as an institution, that's where we see ourselves playing a big role and making sure the environment works for people who are interested in meeting the standards. Thank you.
Excellent, very, very impressive what's happening there. So thank you for your work and your leadership in this area. So let me check if Prof. Torto Charles is available with us. And Prof. Torto, would like to ask you to just reflect on, and that's going to be, I think, the last question before I go to Q&A here, to reflect with us on how best African governments, entrepreneurs, researchers, and policymakers could come together and work on promoting agri-food processing technologies to facilitate innovation through innovation hubs or any other ways that you think that should work. So, Prof, I hope your line is better now.
Thank you very much. I hope this time you can get me. Thank you so much.
Yes, we do.
So with that, what we're looking at is that we need stakeholders' engagement. That will be the first and most ultimate one, for us to agree on the various solutions to address the agri-food processing challenges. Because when we have all these stakeholders, both the researchers, the entrepreneurs, government, policy makers coming together on one table to discuss the issues on our decks in terms of the challenges, we can then arrive at a good solution to propel the agri-food processing situation we have within our countries. We also need a government to support us to create innovation hubs, because with the innovation hubs in agri-food processing, that will be the key driver for new ideas, new technologies to address the challenge of agri-food processing that we are having in our countries. And
Prof,
then
can
you
put your video on, Prof? Is it okay? Can you do it where
yes.
you are? No, that's fine.
The line is weak, so it may go up.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you very much. So the third one is that
thank you.
We need all the innovation hubs to be attached to the research institutes and then the universities, so that we can work hand in hand with the universities and then the research institutions and the innovation hubs. And to achieve this, the government must support us to create the innovation hubs within the research institutions and the universities, so that they are well situated in the research institution and the universities. In addition to that, we need the government to support us in terms of budgetary challenges that we are going to face, because research comes with a lot of budgets, and we can't do that alone. We need the government to hold us, support us with budget to support these activities. And then the next one is that the key laboratory equipment that we need for our innovation hubs, we need for our research, when they are imported, we need exemptions. The ones that can be done locally, we will improve upon them. The government should support us to apply them. But the ones that we import into the country, we need tax exemptions so that we can have a lot of these in our innovation hubs, in our research laboratories, and in our universities. So with these key areas, if we're able to bring these 5 into focus, we will be able to achieve a lot when it comes to expanding, innovating, and moving agri-foods into a better position than where we are. These are the things, moderator, I also want to add to our discussion today. Thank you very much.
Medase, Prof. Excellent for taking your time to be here with us, and thank you also for solving the technical issues that we have there. Prof, we cannot emphasize more the role of governments in science and technology innovations, research and development in general in the agri-food chain, but certainly in particular in the agri-food processing, especially the emerging processing sectors. Because of rampant imitation, it's very difficult for a pioneer technical innovator to reap all the benefits of the innovation. That creates a disincentive for most of the smallholders to invest heavily in terms of innovation, even if they had the skills and the capabilities. So bringing these partnerships around the innovation hub or other institutional infrastructures to build bridges between private, public, and academic and technical sectors or components of the food system is extremely important. Just like the example we heard from the growth standards in Uganda, where the public sector is taking the lead, but also bringing everybody on board. I think in terms of technological innovation, that's what we need. And that's where we, I think, have a lot to ask for and expect from our government. So we have about less than 10 minutes to go. So what I will do before we go to a short break, I will just open for a couple of questions that can go to any of our fireside chat panelists. So if there's something in the chat, Lai, you can read it for us. Otherwise, let us know, maximum of 2.
Okay, we have quite a few. We have 6 in the chat, so let's do 2 for now. The first one from Tumaini Erasto Robert Mazengo. How can research and development institutions take forward the experience from case study countries presented? Are there any initiatives on the Malabo Montpellier panel which can be carried forward, which does not need much of policy shift?
Okay, so and what is the second one? That first one, I thought that Prof. Kwesiga can take on. But what's the second question?
Okay, let me move to the third one because the second one is still in line with the first. From Catherine Kilelu, did the panel consider what opportunities are presented by leveraging a green approach to catalyzing Africa's food systems transformation through food processing?
Okay, so that's addresses to the panel, maybe something on the panel here,
and then
right?
Last one on standardization from Yifru Bekele. Quality and standardization are key factors that strengthening the regulatory systems to ensure food quality standards, safety are in place. Do countries have these capabilities? The roles of the private sector in this space is negligible. What measures must government take? Affordability of processed food is key.
I think that that one we probably go back to Ms. Ejalo, Patricia. I think she has been very eloquent about the examples and the successes in Uganda, but she can tell us a little bit more in terms of the role of the private sector and how they support the private sector. But let's go back, if that's possible, Prof. Kwesiga. The lessons you've heard here coming from the 3 case study countries, maybe Ruth as well, and Prof. Toto have comments on that. How can they be taken to scale? Uganda is already one of those case study countries, right? And Ghana is as well. But how could those examples be taken to scales and perhaps also integrated into the work of your respective organizations? So we start with that. And then we go to Ms. Patricia about the standards, quality, and the cost of food. Thank you.
Thank you very much. As I was presenting about the issue of appropriate technology, by appropriateness, I mean efficient technologies, affordable technologies, technologies of the modern era, the 4th industrial revolution technologies. Part of the problem, even in the skilling, is that we are still stuck in the status quo, the way we used to do things in the pre-independence, the same way we are still training people. We are using obsolete machineries to train these people. That's why they don't get the necessary exposure that we are talking about. So we have to be. I think earlier on was Dr. Brown who said he talked about leapfrogging. We have leapfrog from the archaic technologies we still engage in, and address modern technologies. What we can engage in artificial intelligence technologies, blockchains, robotics, biotechnologies, 3D printing, and so on. It can be done. I'm an industrial engineer by profession. And for many years, I lived and worked in America as an engineer. And when I come back to Africa, the question is, why can't we do it? We have what it takes, and we know what is needed. We just have to be courageous enough and to upset the apple cart and do the right thing. Address the technologies that can be helpful in upscaling the things we are talking about. We must develop robust industry.
And I think you and your organizations are doing that exactly in Uganda, Prof, right?
Yes,
and
sir.
that's how we're going to get that done. And your example is very good. So if you allow me, I'll just ask the other Professor Charles if he has a comment on this as well. Thank you. Prof. Torto, are you there?
Hello, I'm here. Come again, please.
We're just talking about of the examples that you hear here from the reports. Is there anything that you would take on board into CSIR for scaling up, or at least into your programmatic portfolio?
Yes, thank you very much. So from the reports, we are going to scale up still on our transfer of the developed technologies to end users. And in this, we are focusing on youth and women. That is the new strategy we are bringing on board, where we want to bring the youth and women to know what technologies we have and are available for upscaling. The other SMEs that we have engaged, we are still going to continue with them to expand their portfolio. So these are the two strategies we are picking from the report and moving forward at CSIR with it. Thank you, sir.
Excellent, nice. So then last but not least, there's a lot of interesting, important, and really substantive advances that you just spoke about, Ms. Patricia. But if you just want to take up that last question before I turn over for the break, on the role of the private sector in standards and quality, and how you work with that, and what that might have in terms of impact on the cost of food down the road. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, and thank you for a very good question. We are encouraging the private sector to participate in the development of standards. As far as we're concerned right now, the top two participating entities are government institutions and private sector, because they're the ones who use these standards more than anybody else. So we've encouraged them to participate. We are training and giving awareness and sensitization to the various associations. We have partnered with associations because it's easier for their members to get information through their working groups than for us to run around looking for individuals. And we're able to have a bigger influence through the associations that exist. We have information on standards and conformity services that are available at the associations. So in essence, we make sure that we train them to speak as if they are Bureau of Standards. So you need any information about standards, you can get it from the private sector because they have been trained to understand what it means to implement those standards. We've decentralized our services and brought things like certification and testing closer to the regional element. It is not easy to put up a testing lab, but we were fortunately supported by Trademark Africa. And now we have testing labs, other than the headquarters in Kampala, we have them in Gulu, we have them in Mbale and Mbara. And I love what Professor Kwesiga said. You know, some of the technology we need him to come up with, how we can have the testing equipment available, maintained here in Uganda. We don't need to keep calling people from outside. This is not difficult. We can do it. We have the expertise, and we need to change the way we train our people. We have encouraged self-regulation amongst private sector. So we've told the private sector, if you have the capacity to invest in testing in the area of the area you're particular to, we will recognize your testing to confirm that it follows what we follow, because we are accredited to ISO 17025. We don't accredit them, but we recognize that they are following a similar system, and then we can use their results in offering them certification. And it has opened that up for other private sector players to come in. The government has the ability to have testing in various sectors, but private sector can decide, I'm going to open a lab for grain testing. And you get that lab recognized, and then you offer the service to the people who are available for grain testing. We're reducing the certification and testing fees so that the micro, small, and medium enterprises can enjoy what is available and get the how do you say it? The opportunity to implement standards. Everybody must start somewhere. And so we give them the opportunity to do that. And as they grow, we've actually grown from about 13% of the micro and small in 2 years ago. Now we are at 25% of them being certified, and we are seeing this growing every year. So I would say that the capacity as far as standards implementation is concerned is very much available. And the ESC region has done very well in terms of standards development and their implementation. Thank you.
Excellent. Well, ma'am, congratulations for the very successful work of the Prof standards. Also hearing Prof Kwesiga, we see why Uganda is among these case study countries. Thank you also to Prof Onyango and Prof Tatro. So sorry to the audience, we are 3 minutes here beyond our time, and I'm sure it's been a long 2 hours. People want to take a small break, so please excuse me for not taking more questions. And I will hand over now back to Dr. Butake for the rest of the program. Back to you, Lai. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Bajan, and thank you to all our speakers from the thematic fireside chat. Your contributions are well appreciated, and we continue to have a couple of questions in the Q&A. Hopefully we'll have time to come back to them as we progress. So it's 17:03 in Kigali. We have roughly 6-7 minutes for a short coffee break, and we're going to resume at exactly 15:10 GMT, 17:10 CAT. So please take these 6 minutes, grab a coffee, grab some water, and we'll be back to open part 3 with the ministerial roundtable session. Thank you, and see you in a bit. Welcome back. So if you're just joining us, this is the 14th meeting of the Malabo Montpellier Forum. And over the course of this discussion, we have formally launched the latest report by the Malabo Montpellier panel, themed Value Up Policy Innovations to Advance Africa's Food Processing Sector for Growth, Jobs, and Health. We are about to move on to part 3 of this session, where we will host a ministerial roundtable discussion. But before we hand over to the moderator of the roundtable, we would like you to look at some highlights from the report in some images, just for a couple of minutes before we move on to the conversation. Cue in the video.
Africa is the fastest growing continent. Population is projected to grow by 2.5% annually, and by 2063, it is projected that there will be over 1 billion young people aged between 15 and 35 in Africa. At the same time, the continent is witnessing a steady rise in urbanization, with almost half its population projected to live in urban areas by 2030. This upward trends in population growth, income, and urbanization levels have multiple implications for Africa's agricultural sector, ultimately increasing food demand. Across Africa, the increasing modernization of the retail sector, coupled with a high demand for shelf-stable, ready-to-eat, ready-to-cook, and easy-to-prepare processed foods, has been a game-changer for food environments. The increased demand for processed foods provides an opportunity for Africa's food processing sector to grow and contribute to economic growth. Yet, the continent remains a net and growing importer of processed foods. The 14th report of the Malabo Montpellier panel reviews the significant progress in Africa's emerging food processing sector. Value Up: Policy innovations to advance Africa's food processing sector for growth, jobs, and health presents evidence of government actions that have contributed to building a conducive, enabling environment to boost the food processing sector. The report draws on the experiences of Ghana, Kenya, and Senegal to showcase the policy and institutional innovations and programmatic interventions recommended for adoption in other African countries. The Malabo Montpellier panel makes a couple of critical recommendations. Incentivize the establishment and growth of food processing enterprises. Boosting the production of processed foods necessitates greater investment. Strategies may include tax exemptions on advanced processing equipment, local raw materials, construction supplies for these industries, and with electricity tariffs. Increase investment in technical and business skills training to foster innovation. Supporting youth to pursue relevant training programs will improve their employability and entrepreneurship opportunities in the sector, leading to a more skilled workforce capable of developing innovative products. Enhance export prospects for processed food products. Integrated regional markets and strong performance in these markets are critical components of strategies to promote Africa's food processing sector. However, to increase the export of processed products, it is crucial to tackle cross-border trade barriers. Governments can achieve this by lowering export costs, leveraging regional trade agreements for improved market access, and ensuring compliance with international standards and certifications. Several African countries have made strides in growing their food processing sectors, but more must be done. Further progress can be achieved through strategies to ramp up investments in infrastructure and human capital, reduce tariff and non-tariff trade barriers, and build a dynamic food processing industry that will provide added value to locally produced agricultural commodities, create jobs, and contribute to improved food security. Highly recommended.
If you haven't already, please head to mamopanel.org, resources, food processing, and download the report. We have shared the link in the chat and we'll continue to share the link in the course of this conversation. And with that, let me now invite the chair and moderator of the Ministerial Roundtable session, the visiting researcher at Imperial College London and member of the Malabo Montpellier panel, Dr. Debisi Araba.
Dr. Butake, thank you very much. Good afternoon again, ladies and gentlemen. For those of you just joining us or joined after we began the session, we are now proceeding to the Ministerial Roundtable. It is my privilege to invite the following speakers to the virtual roundtable. Honorable Mwebesa Francis, Minister of Trade, Industry and Cooperatives of the Republic of Uganda, and Dr. Joshua Mutambi, Commissioner for Processing and Marketing at the Ministry. Also, it's our pleasure to have Honorable Yaw Frimpong-Ado, the Deputy Minister for Food and Agriculture at the Ministry of Food and Agriculture for the Republic of Ghana, Dr. Jama Mukwana, the Principal Secretary, State Department for Industry, Ministry of Investments, Trade and Industry of the Republic of Kenya, Dr. Chantal Ingabire, the Director General, Planning, Ministry of Agriculture and Animal Resources for the Republic of Rwanda, Ms. Iman Ben Rabia, Directorate of Communication, International Cooperation and Partnerships Officer at the Ministry of Industry and Trade in the Kingdom of Morocco. It is my pleasure to welcome our distinguished speakers to the roundtable. Do we have everyone on? So my first question will be to the Honorable Minister from Uganda. Minister, Uganda has implemented several policy reforms and initiatives to modernize its food and agriculture sector. Your National Industrial Policy 2020 highlights avenues and investment opportunities for agro-industrialization through value addition to agricultural raw materials. Now, could you share with us the policies and programs being undertaken by the government of Uganda to support and attract investments in food processing? And also, how are these investments channeled to meet the needs of small, medium enterprises in food processing? Over to you.
I think that will be Dr. Joshua on behalf of Honorable Mwebesa.
Dr. Mutambi, is the minister on? Or will you be representing the minister on here? Okay, perhaps while the team reaches out to the Honorable Minister and his colleagues from Uganda, we move, is the Deputy Minister from Ghana
Hello.
online? Hello.
Hello, this is Joshua, Dr. Joshua Mutambi from Uganda. Do you get me?
Yes, Dr. Mutambi, we can hear you. It's not very clear. Did you hear the question, or would you like me to repeat it?
You can repeat it, please, because I was having some interference.
That's fine. That's fine. So based on your national industrial policy, what policies and programs are being undertaken in Uganda to support and attract investments in food processing, especially as it meets the needs of small, medium-sized enterprises?
Thank you very much. panelists and Your Excellencies and dear participants. Good afternoon, good evening, good morning. I want to thank you for the experts and the consultants for the comprehensive report with the action agenda that has been presented. Straight away to your question of how the government of Uganda is supporting the food processing sector and the investments. Yes, the government has been implementing following the Vision 2040 and the NDP3, which is and this government industrialization program, which supports the agro business and the investments within agriculture, which is actually the backbone of the country. In terms of supporting the investments, the government embarked on establishing the industrial parks. And within these industrial parks, there are key priority sectors that are supported, including agro-processing. And here we give some incentives, including free land and all other fiscal and non-fiscal incentives to the investors. In this case, we also allocate some workspaces to the SMEs, and whereby there are some other incentives that are provided, including business incubators, research institutions, where these SMEs and startups would come up with their ideas, and they are nurtured until they get out with their businesses. So in this case, there are a number of policy actions that are supporting investments, including providing some financing initiatives through banks and other financial institutions. We have, for example, the Agricultural Credit Facility, which aims at boosting large-scale commercial farming, including agro-processing. In this case, this is not only limited to medium and large investments, but also small and medium enterprises are included to benefit from these facilities. Yes, we are aware that there are other initiatives that the government has provided, including through agriculture, like National Agriculture and Advisory Services initiative, where some free seedlings are being provided to those farmers that are interested in growing some priority commodities. I can go on and on, but I think even including the Ghana National Industrial Policy, which also provides some action areas that support people or businesses that are involved in industrialization. Not only does that end, but also the government has established some logistical infrastructure facilities, such as the one-stop border posts, which facilitate and simplifies the imports of inputs that are raw materials for the processors or clearance of exports of the finished products within the region.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mutambi. That's quite comprehensive to hear what Uganda is doing. So moving and trying to link this with the experience of Ghana, do we have the Honorable Deputy Minister from Ghana online?
Yes,
Deputy Minister Ado? Wonderful.
Yes,
it's a pleasure. Yes, I can hear you loud and clear, sir. Now, you've just heard what the Ugandan experience. Now, yes. Ghana is one of the countries that was listed in the case studies. Are there specific programs that you have that Ghana has designed to improve the competitiveness of its agri-food industry at all scales. Are there any specific programs to address the challenges related to technology, infrastructure, finance, skills, etc., that you could share with us today?
Yeah, thank you so much. And let me send you greetings from my president, Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, and my minister, Dr. Brett Champon, who was built to be on this panel. Something whisked him away, and I had to replace him. It's interesting discussions. And Ghana has initiated several moves to combat what we call post-harvest loss. And before any industrial revolution can take place, first of all, you need to enhance your food production capacity. And as you all know, we have what we call the Planting for Food and Jobs. The phase 1 started in 2017, and we reviewed it about 2 years ago, and we are now doing phase 2, which is Planting for Food and Jobs phase 2. And what the Planting for Food and Jobs phase 2 seeks to do is to link agricultural production to industry. And here, what we mean is this. We have selected 10 crops, which a lot of them Ghana imports in commercial quantities. Vegetables, the cereals, and our root crops. And whilst we target increase in production of these crops, we also linked with industry. So the Ministry of Trade and Industry is also closely linked to the Ministry of Agriculture. So we have what we all know as the One District, One Factory program policy that the government has pursued over the past few years. And the whole idea is to link production to industry. And here in the PFJ phase 2, the emphasis is on commercial agriculture. And one major critical thing that has been afflicting our industrial development is post-harvest losses, agricultural development, is post-harvest losses. So the Ministry of Food and Agriculture is collaborating with the Ministry of Trade and Industry in the establishment of this One District, One Factory to target the production areas. So here, what are we doing? We are looking at the enclaves where major crops are produced, and then with the collaboration of the Ministry of Trade and Industry, we would establish or encourage the private sector. And mind you, Ghana is encouraging a lot of private sector involvement in both agriculture and industry. So the private sector, we need to give incentives to the private sector person to move to, for example, a food basket place in Ghana called the Afram Place. We need to improve infrastructure over there so that the private sector, when importing any material for agriculture production or industry, there's what we call the tax exemptions that we give to all industries who are going to put value on the agricultural produce that we do here. So that incentive is working for people who are going to invest in the agricultural zones. So whilst we are looking at this one, we also look at our free zones areas. We've established some free zones areas, and these free zones areas are to give a lot of incentives to anybody who wants to set up anything to produce any agriculture, to turn any agriculture produce the value addition, especially in the fruits, dairy, vegetables, in those areas, because most of the crops we produce, they perish and their shelf life is so short, and because of that, the attention is now on value addition. So far, with the One District, One Factory being set up all around the areas, what we need to do is to increase the production of these crops that we are targeting, so we can we can establish what we call true food security and food sovereignty. Because in our present state, if it continues like this, and we still go with this perishable food crops, we are not going to get anywhere. That is what we are doing right now in Ghana. And as far as food production is concerned, the Planting for Food and Jobs Phase 2 has targeted these crops, and we have certain numbers that we want to achieve within the period. And if we do all these things without the industrial setup, then we will go back to the days of post-harvest losses. And so far, this is what we are doing. We are also putting up infrastructure, the silos, and then the warehouses, so we can store a lot of the produce that we do here, so in that we can feed industry all year round. And things have begun to work very well for us. And I know that in the coming harvesting period, we are going to get a lot that will be linked to these industries that are being set up in the production areas. So far, this is the story Ghana is pursuing. So.
Well, thank you very much, Honorable Ado. It was a pleasure to just hear the suite of interventions that Ghana is taking, especially how you are connecting the industrialization policies with your agriculture production policies and linking the capabilities in industrialization with food production for competitiveness, both within Ghana and, of course, exploring exports outside of the country. Taking this further along, do we have Dr. Mukwana, the Principal Secretary from the State Department of Industry, Ministry, Investments, Trade and Industry of the Republic of Kenya online? Is Dr. Mukwana online? Okay, if not, I'd like to pivot to Dr. Chantal Ingabire, Director General Planning, Ministry of Agriculture and Animal Resources of the Republic of Rwanda. Dr. Ingabire, are you online?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Yes, I can. Thank you for joining us. Earlier, a few months ago, in June of this year, your ministry, Minagri, adopted the 5th Strategic Plan for Agriculture Transformation. It's a blueprint policy document to steer food systems transformation for nutrition and income in Rwanda. Strengthening a favorable investment environment for the private sector is one of the priorities highlighted in this blueprint policy document. So considering the need for reliable supply of raw materials for processing, what initiatives are you taking as a government as a government in Rwanda to improve agriculture productivity and also linking processes with reliable, steady supply from farmers?
Thank you so much, moderator. Excellencies, distinguished country representatives, participants, greetings from Kigali. It's a great honor. I'm representing my minister, the Minister for Agriculture and Animal Resources in Rwanda, who didn't manage to join this very important conversation. And I'm honored to be here representing his office. Before I talk about the different initiatives, I would like to highlight that food processing industry in this country is of a great importance, and it's contributing significantly to our GDP. And the policy environment is really friendly. As you just mentioned, moderator, we recently launched our national strategy for transformation, where the new government aims to modernize agriculture, targeting a growth of over 6%, but also targeting to double private sector investment and more than double the exports by 2029. And agro-processing, among other industries, is expected to be a key driver of this invasion to growth. At the sector level, you mentioned the Strategic Plan for Agriculture Transformation, PSTA 5. It's guided by the NST2 and the Rwanda's Vision 2050. And the strategy, as you said, the moderator, is to be private sector-led, and it will focus on building sustainable and resilient agri-food systems. Some of the key interventions, I don't really think we have sufficient time to talk about all of the interventions proposed in this strategic plan. But among others, we have expansion of area under irrigation, because here we want to really increase production and productivity while building climate resilience of our farmers. So the target is to increase area under irrigation by 85% for our farmers, but also ensuring their climate resilience, but also ensuring sustainability of agri-produce supply chains. Another key intervention is to increase access to agriculture inputs. A majority of our farmers are smallholder farmers, and they are still, despite the investment of the government in the previous years, they are still being challenged with accessing fertilizers, seed, improved animal breeds, which are really very crucial for productivity and production in general. So the major intervention we propose in the current strategic plan is to increase their access to these particular inputs through subsidies, through access to more affordable agri-financing facilities to allow them produce sufficient raw material. But also, this is not only targeting farmers, because with the PSTA 5, we opted for a food systems approach. We are currently not only looking at the farmers, but also to other different actors in the supply chain. Among them, we have agro-processing SMEs and others. Regarding the market linkages, we are developing a new land management model on agriculture land. Under this model, resources, technologies will be oriented to specific agriculture production areas, while fostering synergies among agri-food systems actors. And these specific areas are also called agri-hubs, and they'll be provided with sufficient infrastructure, such as roads, storage facilities, and also market facilities, which will attract the service providers. And we are expecting that with this new model, we not only increase.
So I'm sure you'll like it, but if you don't, huh?
Hello?
Yes, please carry on, Dr. Ngabire.
Thank you so much. I was just talking about this new model with PSTA 5 that will allow us to increase not only agriculture production, but also ensure stronger market linkages. I think I can maybe stop by here. Thanks.
No, thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Ngabire. So starting where you just left off, the agri-hubs does sound quite exciting. Concentrating, all the inputs and know-how and creating that environment where there's the right infrastructure connecting the processing with the production to ensure that all stakeholders in the agri-food system have the right incentives to maximize their efficiency and competitiveness. I want to, before I take this to the next speaker, I want to check again. Do we have Dr. Juma Mukwana, the Principal Secretary from the Ministry of Investments, Trade and Industry of the Republic of Kenya online? Perhaps not. Mrs. Iman Ben Rabia, the Director of Communication at the International Cooperation and Partnerships at the Ministry of Industry Trade in the Kingdom of Morocco. Are you online?
Yes. Hello, everyone.
Hello, it's a pleasure to speak with you. So through the Plan Maroc Vert, your country has shown its high-level commitment to transform, excuse me. Excuse me. Goodness me. You
Dr.
surely must excuse me. That was, I have no idea where that came from.
Okay, great to have you back.
Yes, thank you very much. So Plan Maroc Vert, this is much talked about. The world loves what Morocco is doing with its industrialization policy, connecting production systems, export-oriented markets. Now, what policies and incentives do you have to attract additional investment into your agro-processing industry? Also, how are you orienting the agro-processing sector? Is it more for domestic markets? Is it more export-oriented? And if it's export-oriented, where are your market signals coming from?
Thank you for having me into this forum. It's an honor to be among such important experts and talking about an important problematics, which is the processed food and agri-sector food in Africa. So yes, you're right. When talking about what we call the Plan Maroc Vert or the Green Morocco Plan, the industrial part was to think how we can combine it with agriculture and be able to straighten both public policies. So when our ministry think about his strategy, which was the acceleration industry plan, which was covering 2014 to 2021, we try to understand what are the needs of the agricultural side, and that's how we worked with the Agriculture Department on a common program, which will highlight or focus on the agricultural products and try to make this transformation and have high added value products. This is when we signed the program in 2015, and we had many programs that we help and support via grants, via tax incentives. We also try to help the investors by working on making the identification of the project that they could work on. We call this the project bank. The idea is quite simple. We try to find in our economy or in our country the products or the sector that we can produce internally instead of importing it. So while we have done this work, we developed all the figures considering this investment, which means that when we come, you come to see me, I can tell you, okay, we have a production, a citrus industry that is producing 2.3 million, and we need to transform this and not just export it like this. So we need to go into the phase of transformation in industry, and we are willing to invest with you and support you through this process. We did this in many sectors. This what makes us manage to have more transformation in our industry from simple products and agricultural products to industrial transform. Also, I need to talk about industry and plans are not enough, and investment and grants given to investment. We need to have an ecosystem. We need to make infrastructure available. We need to make all the administration procedures simple. We need to be able to answer to any investor's question regarding regulatory reforms, regarding working laws, regarding their ability to export. We also worked on developing a special policy to support the prime exportators as the exportators in general, to help them go attack other markets. So yes, we are thinking about how we can support our local markets, but we are also encouraging our investors and our firms and companies to go in Africa, but also to go in America and to go in Europe, because the market is bigger. And talking about a bigger market, we cannot not speak about African Continental Trade Agreement, which is, we think, an important door open to African continents, we as the others, to be able to make a big gap, because opening the borders between our countries, being able to address this so many consumers in Africa, but also being able to profit from each country's forces and advantages to develop what each one needed, I think is the key to be able to really develop the food process sector in our countries.
Thank you very much, Ms. Benrabia. Now, it's great to hear what Morocco is doing and this integrated end-to-end plan and approach, especially as it pertains to import and export-oriented policies for agriculture competitiveness. Before I hand over back to Dr. Butake, I want to take liberties to find out if we have any other ministries represented on this call. We've tried with the Ministry of Industry, Trade, and from the government of Kenya. Do we have any other government representatives on the call? I believe not. In that case, well, thank you. I would like to express my sincere appreciation to our eminent speakers. And before I hand over back to Dr. Butake, I'd like to express my thanks to Honorable Mobesa Francis, Honorable Yaw Frimpongado, Dr. Chantal Ingabire, and of course, Ms. Iman Benrabia. Thank you very much for your interventions. Thanks for bringing nuance and perspectives to the policy innovations happening across the continent, to provide the incentives, the investments, the excitement, and the innovation around transforming agro-food processing on the continent. Dr. Butake, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Dr. Araba, for chairing the Ministerial Roundtable, and thank you to all the government representatives who responded present to our invitation. So we are moving on to the next part of the session, invited reactions. We have two speakers, one from the German Federal Ministry for Economic Cooperation and Development, and another speaker from the African Development Bank. So we are going to begin with Mr. Denker Hendrik, advisor at the German Federal Ministry for Economic Cooperation and Development, BMZ. Please, sir, take the floor and share your thoughts on this research and this debate that we've been having for the past 2 hours. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, moderator, for giving me the floor and having invited me. It's been a great pleasure so far to listen to this discussion and to the recommendations of the report. So for me, it's the first time to be part of a panel like that and see this presentation of the findings take place. And I must say that I'm very impressed because this bridge that you're building between science, research on the one side and practical policy making on the other, it's something almost unique, I would say, something very special. So congratulations to you for this report and this panel. And I'm sure that the policy recommendations that have been part of this discussions won't stop to be shared with others after this meeting, but this is only the beginning. And I have realized that having these recommendations of the report is not like having a blueprint for reform and transformation that just can be taken and then applied in another country. Policy is always very context specific, and I think that the interventions from country representatives in both sessions have really been witness to that they have been very specific answers and very specific policy measures that have made a difference. So thank you for sharing this practical insight. Now, the one sentence that's probably struck me most and will be the one that I'm going to take home today was the sentence that government needs to be intentional about food processing policies. And I think that's really it, and it underscores what we probably all know, and this is why the MAMO panel provides these reports. Policy matters. Policy does make a difference, and I think especially those 4 examples that were heard in the ministerial roundtable session really showed that there are specific measures that can be taken, and as I said before, they need to be very context specific and might be very different from country to country. The one thing they all have in common, next to being intentional, of course, is that they all require a lot of investment. They all require a lot of money to really make a difference. Maybe in some cases more investment money is needed than others, but I think the investment part of it in when you think about skill, when you think about quality and standard regulatory authorities and all that, it's all a question of investment, of public investment, but of course also about private investment. And I think that's probably the second point that most of the intervention had in common, that it was very much about having this public-private cooperation in having a whole sector, a whole value chain set of actors working in the same direction and working together. So this is something that seems to be very crucial. And the other point was the question of free markets, that food processing sector and its products cannot stop at national borders, but need to go beyond. I think this is where we talk about free markets in Africa, open markets in Africa, getting rid of tariffs and border bureaucracy that probably sometimes hinders the export and import of food products. And I think these are 2 points that bring me back to where we start with the Pan-African perspective. And when Commissioner Sacco was talking earlier during this meeting, she was talking about CAADP, the Comprehensive African Agricultural Development Policy. And I think this is a point that we start talking about again because of the post-Malabo process that we're in, that all policies on this continental agenda are being revisited. And I believe that when it comes to public investment in the agricultural sector, agriculture and food sector, we're coming back to that 10% investment target that has been set by CAADP, and that has been the benchmark for all agricultural ministries and all national budgets across Africa. I think that this target needs to be underscored again and again, and I think the closer you get to that, the more likely it becomes also to make progress in processed food, what we talked about today. So this is very important, that investment in these areas really is a priority for national government, and I think that the African Union and CAADP has a very important role to play to underscore that message and to renew it, and to also make it the common goal for the next 10 years period. Now, another point that I think is very important when we talk about investment is access to finance. Now we're talking about the private side of investment. At the end of the day, it is private enterprises that make the difference, be it small-scale farmers as part of a larger value chain, or be it producers, factories, enterprises, startups play a very important role, and they all seek for finance. Now, when we talk about access to finance for African agriculture, and you talk about this topic with bankers, they will normally tell you, well, this is a high risk and probably sometimes low return business. I think when we talk about food processing food, it's probably a bit different, because here we're talking about the kind of industrial end of value chain. And I think this is where investment really can be, and will in many cases be very profitable. It's a business chance for an opportunity for so many banks. And I hope that part of the discussion process and the policymaking process that is starting now, probably also thanks to this report, will be focusing on that business ideas can be created, bankable projects can be developed and designed, and that ultimately also the private sector can really kick off and use the opportunities that this sector offers for growth, jobs, and health. So thank you for your attention, and look forward to the rest of this wonderful discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Denker Hendrik, for those remarks. And we're delighted that you were able to make it this time around. We appreciate your contributions to this conversation. I will now invite our next speaker for reaction to the report, Dr. Martin Fregene, Director of Agriculture and Agro-Industry at AFDB. Over to you, sir.
Yeah, no, thank you very much, Dr. Butake, and thank you very much also. I'd like to thank Dr. Usman Badian for the invitation. And good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you are, ladies and gentlemen. And first of all, the bank has been a partner with the Malabo Montpellier panel for a very long time. And we really prize very greatly this partnership. Why? Because some of the discussions being held, some of the papers have come out, are the kind of things that especially the African continent needs to drive agricultural development. You know, we all know that Africa is faced with a declining per capita production of food. Even though there has been bright spots all around, you know, we see our import bills, you know, increasing, and it's simply because, you know, we need to understand what's happening in our cultural sector, and then we need to ensure that you know, that sector is strong. You know, the sector employs a lot of people in some countries as high as 50%. And then, you know, just the low productivity of agriculture means that those people have lived in poverty. there is no secret that productivity has been and will always be the greatest driver of profitability in agriculture throughout the ages, from the post-agricultural transformations in Britain to the one in the US, and then in the rest of Europe to the one in Mexico and then China, Pakistan and India, and then more lately China and then Brazil. Productivity has always been the biggest driver. When you double production and there are fair prices, farmers immediately earn more income. And that transforms the whole area, because they can invest in even better technologies, can invest in production infrastructure. Then they can also, also save money, and then things change in the rural area. Listening to the ministerial panel, there are a couple of things I heard and I really like very much. The Ugandan minister was talking about incentives to increase private sector investment. And then the Ghana was also talking about agro-industrialization and value addition. How do you tie production to value addition in an efficient and competitive manner? Rwanda talked about production infrastructure, also irrigation, especially in the light of climate change. And also the increased finance to all the actors in the sector, and access to farm inputs, extension, know-how, opening up new land. The Moroccan representative also spoke about trade policies, regional trade policies. In response, I would like to say three things in a response to what has been discussed so far, and also in response to the very important ministerial conference. The political economy, the first thing is political economy of the agricultural sector. Political economy of agriculture in Africa is such that some crops are considered political crops. For example, in Southern Africa, it's maize. Government policies, have nothing to do with the market. It's always about trying to ensure that the government, can maintain the population, both the urban and rural population, on their sides. In West Africa, it's rice. There's a lot of things involved in agriculture on the African continent that has nothing to do with actually with technical things. It's all politics. And that's what the bank called the big meeting in Dakar in 2023 in January. 34 heads of state attended, from 5 ministers, and we discussed that how do we, first of all, have a agreed target on where we want to take agriculture on the continent. Then how do we mobilize political support to ensure that gets done, against all the other interests, both the interest that wants to import food and the interest that want to keep food from going out, and how do we also get development partners around those objectives? So I think it is and I'm very happy the ministers are all, saying the same thing, that indeed government is showing political will to ensure that policies, the right policies are in place that would drive the sector, not policies that would look at other things, but policies that actually will increase productivity, will increase fair prices for farmers, policies that will increase basic infrastructure, both production infrastructure and also especially irrigation for climate adaptation, and also policies that will help marketing. So that's not the first I'd like to say. We really need to get right, the whole question of where do we want to take agriculture on our continent. That will also lead us to invest more in the sector, especially when it comes to building institutions and supporting R&D, and supporting extension, supporting regulatory institutions for seeds, for food safety. Very, very, very important. The second thing I'd like to say is de-risking private sector investment. The private sector has 10 times more money than government and development partners put together. Both the private sector within the country and outside the country, they have a lot of money, but they all perceive agriculture as very risky, both from the political, reversals, of policies, the weather, risk. Agriculture is mostly rain-fed in Africa, and another kind of risk, including seizure of lands. The private sector considers agriculture as very risky. So how do we de-risk agriculture for the private sector to invest. That in many countries there have been very useful instruments. One of them is risk sharing facilities where governments actually share risk with the commercial banks and also financial institutions investing in the sector. And this has worked very well in some countries, including Nigeria, including countries like Togo and countries like Malawi. They've all had RSFs, risk sharing facilities that have worked very well. Another is partial credit guarantees, also providing partial credit guarantees to major actors, especially the hub agro dealers who have to distribute inputs. And this is very important because many of them always see, just getting involved into giving farmers inputs on credit as very risky. But when somebody is covering part of their risk, then they're willing to take that big step. Again, this is something that governments can actually do because the private sector, like I said, has the biggest amount of resources. One of the things to de-risk their investment is also regulatory. Private sector want a level playing field. They don't want to spend 5 years trying to get a seed or an agrochemical registered in the country. Again, very important for us to see what are the biggest concerns of the private sector and see how to put in place intervention that can allay the affairs. And then lastly is institutional capacity. There are no shortage of good policies on the continent, even though some of them can be better designed. But one of the biggest problems, that we have is just implementing those policies. We see that often delivery units in the countries, are always overwhelmed. Many delivery units, are dealing with so many things at the same time, dealing with so many donors, dealing with so many agencies, and they're always overwhelmed. And at the end, most of the projects are not properly implemented, or even when they're implemented, the results fall short. Here, we really need, to think very carefully of how do we get additional capacity developed. Let me just give two quick examples. One comes from Singapore, and the other one comes from Ethiopia. Yeah, so in Singapore, we all know the miracle of Singapore. Maybe Singapore is not a good example because that country developed without agriculture. But one thing the Singaporean leader did was he decided very early in the whole process that he was going to get the best possible know-how, the best possible abilities of big multinationals, the most competitive companies to come into the country. It was going to create incentives for them to come into the country and then help develop the country. That is why we definitely need PPPs also on the African continent. Where can we get innovative companies? Where can we get forward-looking companies to come and partner with with government in implementing our programs? It has happened in some countries. And I really would like to see it happening much more, in many other countries. In countries like Morocco, in countries like Tunisia, in countries like Senegal, you've had the government actually go try to attract some major, market operators, to come into the country and actually help. And then the second example is from Ethiopia, and we all know the famous agricultural transformation agenda of Ethiopia and the agricultural transformation agency of Ethiopia. This is where government brought in some top consultants, very senior people, to kind of work with civil servants and to see how things can be implemented properly. Again, here we do need them because it's that capacity to implement that actually transforms policies into reality. I think I will stop there, Dr. Bakata. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Dr. Fregene, for those remarks. And thank you again to Mr. Hendrick. With those reactions from BMZ and AFDB, we've had a lot of substance that we can, piggyback off of as we continue to unpack the findings of the latest report by the Malabo Montpellier panel. We are drawing closer to the end of our session, and before I move on to the closing session, we have roughly 4 minutes for just a few quick reactions from the floor. So we can take up to 2 reactions at this time before we move on to the closing session. The floor is open for anyone who wants to make an intervention, you know, a contribution to the discussion that has been happening so far. We have some panel members here. If there's anyone who wishes to add a couple of remarks to the discussion, please let me know and take the floor before we move on to the closing session. I don't see any hands raised. There's one question in the Q&A. Can we promote crop diversification to meet micro and macronutrient demand while advancing food processing? That question is from Ifeinwa Kanu. Can we promote crop diversification to meet micro and macronutrient demand while advancing food processing? I would like to invite one of our panel members to take that question. Dr. Bajan?
Maybe Cheryl, if she's around. No.
Is she here? I don't see her. No.
Okay. Well, I guess, of course, you can do that. First, you can bring into the processing sector many of those nutrient dense and perhaps neglected or not very much promoted food crops and tree products and others, as well as leafy vegetables. They all can get into the processing value chain. But also you can use processing itself for fortification. Right now we're doing large-scale fortification. We're not really in a place where we have the technology, the regulatory environment, standards and others to do it for these micro and small scale industries, but the two you can do. So you just don't need to diversify in terms of crops and raw materials. You can also diversify in the processing segment itself. So thank you, Lai. I think we can then perhaps slowly move towards closing. It's been quite a long session. Thank
Indeed.
you.
Thank you, Bajan. And now we're moving to the closing session. I would like to invite our first speaker, Dr. Aisha Musazi Nakito, scientist and interim program lead for the Malabo Montpellier Panel at Academia 2063.
Thank you very much, Lai, and also thank you, Debisi, for the wonderful ministerial roundtable session, and also to the panelists that have contributed significantly over there. I greet you once again, and I would like to take this opportunity to give a vote of thanks to some of the people who have really helped in ensuring that the MAMO Forum goes on smoothly. I would like to start off by saying that on behalf of the co-chairs of the Malabo Montpellier panel, I extend my gratitude to the honorable ministers, distinguished delegates and stakeholders from the food processing sector who have joined us today virtually for the 14th Malabo Montpellier Forum. The Malabo Montpellier Forum, which convenes twice annually, provides a platform for dialogue and exchange among high-level decision makers, key stakeholders, NGOs, and the private sector to share the panel's research findings across borders. So for today's discussion, it's centered on the panel's latest report, as we've seen all the exchanges that have been going on, which is on policy innovations aimed at advancing Africa's food processing sector, focusing on growth, employment, and health. As you know, an event of this dimension cannot happen overnight. The wheels start rolling months in advance. I therefore thank very much the Malabo Montpellier Panel Secretariat, Dr. Usman and Professor Joachim, as well as the panel members for the tremendous work done towards guiding policy choices that accelerate progress towards food security and improved nutrition in Africa. The dialogue has helped us all to learn from a diverse range of experts, including researchers, academicians, policymakers, food processors, and development partners, among others. A special thanks goes out to the Malabo Montpellier Forum co-chairs for their time in offering guidance on crucial topics related to the transformation of Africa's food systems and economic development. I would also like to thank my colleagues in the research team for their motivation and dedication, Yasin, Serafa, David, to support the Malabo Montpellier panel's activities, and also the communication team led by Lai. Thank you so much for the teamwork, and let's keep the fire burning. On behalf of the panel co-chairs, I would also like to thank all partners in different countries that have helped in the coordination and supporting the preparation of the forum. This also includes the country experts who have reviewed the country case studies from Ghana, Kenya, and Senegal, and also the rapid studies on Morocco, South Africa, and Zimbabwe. We really look forward to future collaborations with you all at this Malabo Montpellier Forum in 2025. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much,
you,
Dr. Nakito, for the vote of thanks. And with that, I will now invite our last speaker for this session, Her Excellency Dr. Asia Ben Salah Alawi, Ambassador at Large to the King of Morocco and co-chair of the Malabo Montpellier Forum.
Well, thank you very much, Laye. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, all protocols observed. As we come to the end of the 14th Malabo Montpellier Forum, I would like to acknowledge the tremendous efforts made by all the stakeholders in advancing Africa's food processing sector. We must tap into all opportunities across the value chain to accelerate the progress in the sector and meet the rising demands for processed foods on the continent. Opportunities, as have been said already, start at the pre-production level, for example, in researching and developing crop varieties with characteristics most suitable for processing. More innovations in linking smallholder farmers to food processors to increase the processors' access to raw materials while increasing farmers' income-generating opportunities is vital. The panel's report has great examples, such as Kenya's warehouse receipt system. Improved coordination is absolutely crucial, and we don't talk much about these, even among ministries themselves. This aspect is critical, so I'm happy to notice that my own country sets a good example for enhanced cooperation, coordination among ministries in this intersectoral sector domain. For instance, the program contract signed between the Ministry of Agriculture and the one of Trade and Industry in 2017 until 2022 for 5 years, beyond increasing technical cooperation, has immensely increased the investment opportunities and jobs creation in this sector. So therefore, we see that food processing contributes to the transformation of Africa's food systems, which can be done sustainably. For my part, I do wish to see more cooperation of the relevant stakeholders with civil society NGOs active in climate change fight, environment protection, and sustainability at large. This is just really starting seriously in Morocco, but it's very hard to get everybody around the table to speak together. For example, we know that food processing reduces food waste through preservation. However, in the face of growing interest in circular bioeconomy, we must reduce the use of non-biodegradable packaging materials. This is another under-tapped opportunity in this food sector. However, many opportunities are highlighted in the panel's report launched today, and I encourage you to disseminate it to your colleagues and partners. I hope the discussion have inspired you as much as they have inspired me. I wish that significant dialogues, as seen today, about advancing and growing Africa's food processing industry continue. Allow me to express, however, a particular concern, once again, as a woman, as a mother, to see the quickly increasing obesity among our youth in our continent. I wish we could address strongly the youth addiction to oversweet food and beverages products and as well to oversalted ones. Of course, this could be done through better controls, but precisely through reduction of the added sugar and salt. I do know that this is a vast program because the enterprises are extremely reluctant to do so because they are unfortunately very profitable niche, for their gains. As for women, allow me to insist here again that a special attention must be paid to the conditions of their work in certain domains of food processing where work is rather harsh and detrimental to health. For instance, we in Morocco, we are endeavoring to address the problem generated by shelling the argin fruits, which is carried out almost exclusively by women. Such activity is extremely profitable for women, but at the same time, it is very hard and hands damaging. And it's unfortunately extremely difficult to address. However, we have to do so. My co-chair, myself, and all the Mammo Forum community all know it is our duty to advocate and act to see the results of the Malabo Montpellier efforts, results, adapted, scaled up, expanded. We certainly will do so for the very inspiring success stories to advance food processing sector for growth, jobs, and health, as the title of this report indicates. But beyond, the progress in this sector can as well secure sustainability, environment protection, and global Africa's welfare, which we are all yearning for. Accordingly, each of us has a vital role to play in this case. I would like to end by thanking you all once again for your valuable contributions. And thank you, Laye, for moderation, and Aisha for all the work you are doing, and all the teams of Academia 2063, and of course, all the members of the panel. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Your Excellency. Did you want to say something?
No, just say thank you to the team for a great job. Thank you to the panel, and thank you to our co-chair and the panel members here. Thank you. It's been a long day, so I'll let you go. Joachim, I think we just can close from here, right?
Sure. Thank you. Thank you to you too, Osman.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you,
Yes,
Joachim.
bye-bye.
Thank you, everybody. Goodbye. See you next time.
Bye-bye.
See you
Thank
soon
you.
in 6 weeks.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye-bye. Has been good. Excellent.
Thank you, Rhoda.
Thank you. Thank you, Aisha, and all the team. Well done. Well done. Nice evening, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Or a nice day, depending on your time zone.
Bye.
Okay.
Thank you,
Bye-bye.
Ambassador. Thank you so much.
Yes.
Bye-bye.